Hey everybody, what is up? Welcome back to Final Trade. We're going to take our November look at Flesh and Blood sales data off of TCG Player. If there's a little more background noise than normal, it's raining pretty hard here. So I've put on the horizontal axis 3 months worth of data, and we can kind of see how these prices have come down. The red line being Arcane Rising Unlimited, the yellow being Crucible War Unlimited. It's come down about $5-6, and the blue line being Welcome to Wraith Unlimited, again about $10 that it's come down in the last 3 months. If we go to the month over month table, this will show October box sales, November box sales, and the month over month difference, and then October average transaction price, November average transaction price, and the month over month difference, and then multiply those two together to get the same for total revenue. And so what you can see is really big bumps in box sales numbers in November over October, but that should be expected because of the Black Friday sale, because of how deep the discounts were on TCG Player, with the bonus bucks on Black Friday being 18%, which is pretty rare to get up that high on bonus buck sales. So 166% increase in Welcome to Wraith Unlimited boxes sold in November over October, even with a slight price decrease. Now, these November prices do not try to take into account what people got cash back from the bonus buck sale. It's simply the headline sales numbers that TCG Player gives you on each product's page. And we can see the same kind of large increase, 163% higher sales of Crucible of War boxes in November over October. Only a 50% increase in Arcane Rising. So we'll move on to the next set, the first edition versions of the next 3 boxes. Put them up on the plot to kind of see the price changes. And again, Tales of Aria and Everfest have had very stable prices for a long time. It's come down a little bit in the last 3 months, but Monarch First Edition had been looking healthy for a little while. Had come back up above $100 and even above $110 on the 7-day moving average plot. And then it's fallen back down into the 80s. So if we pull up the month over month table for these, 270% increase in Monarch First Edition boxes. Now, it started at only 23 in October and went to 85. So still not terribly healthy. You know, there's so much negativity around this product. And I think as time goes on, the negativity is less and less deserved. Yes, on the day of original release of Monarch First Edition, was it May of 2021? And I think it was 125,000 boxes is what LSS told us they printed of Monarch First Edition. On that day, yeah, that was too many, and $400 was too high of a price. But you can't live in the past like that. You have to realize that we are 2.5 years past that. The number of boxes still in existence is much lower, and today you can go out and buy these at $80. So the entire risk profile is different than it was back then. And what I see a lot is younger and newer investors are kind of caught in that situation where they take a snapshot at one point in time and they never update their view on an asset to reflect what the current reality is. And as I just said, the current reality is we're 2.5 years past the release. There have been tens of thousands of those boxes open. The player base has grown incredibly, and the price is much lower than it was then. So you have to reassess what the downside risk and the future potential upside is of an asset in light of those things. I think the market is still being way too negative on Monarch First Edition, just out of momentum, out of bandwagon effect, and the like. So Tales of Aria First Edition sales increased 100%, and Everfest First Edition up almost 400%. So sold nearly 5 times as many boxes in November as it did in October. And what's interesting is we can take these, we can just look at Monarch First Edition versus Monarch Unlimited, and you can see that Monarch Unlimited only sold 11 boxes during the sale. And so you can definitely tell that these are majority not going to be players. They are investors who are willing to pay that $30 extra for the box that has the cold foils in it. And I think we'll probably see something similar in the Tales of Aria First Edition data. Only 2 boxes of Tales of Aria Unlimited got sold in November, even with the bonus buck sale. And you can see when that price difference is only $5, people are saying, yeah, of course I'll pay $5 extra to get the original limited edition cold foils that came in these early boxes. We'll take a quick look, go ahead and plot up the price data of History Pack. It has been incredibly stable over its lifetime, and just bring up the month over month table, 134% increase. So more than doubled the box sales in the month with the Black Friday bonus buck sales. And then we'll get into the more recent sets. Now we should expect a lot better stability in the prices of these. Yeah, so even the worst one went from about $72 to about $65 on the 7-day moving average price, that being Outsiders. And the sales data for these are often not as interesting. They're going to follow more of the traditional TCG expansion lifecycle for several reasons. One is the print run numbers are going to be probably higher. They are more recent sets. They're still more relevant to the gameplay. And so you don't expect there to be as much investor frenzy around these. You instead expect more of the kind of movement where they come out, they're very popular, people want them, people want to open them and play with them, and then they kind of trail off as they become older and older product. Interesting to see this 255% increase in Outsiders sales. And if we come along to the last two most recent sets, you see that kind of drop off as you get out of release and you get into the map pricing era for a product. Dusk Till Dawn and Bright Lights. And Bright Lights actually saw a significant downturn in box sales, but again, it had been in October at least, it was the new set. People were buying it because it was the new set, and then you expect to see this kind of drop off as the people buying it to play with get their fill and move on to the next thing, or they've just bought as much as they would like to buy. Now I'm going to take these last three sets and I'm going to put them up here. We're going to put the horizontal axes together so we can see how is Bright Lights done at the same period in its lifetime compared to the previous two sets, Outsiders and Dusk Till Dawn. And you can see that those cumulative sales in dollars still significantly trail. So it just did not take off as well as the previous two sets did. And yeah, it's more of a limited set focused around one class, and that would probably hurt its appeal. It would make me interested to know what James White and his team intend to do with that kind of idea in the future. If they would want to have more sets that are focused on a single class, or if they could go back to the model of, 2, 3, 4 classes that we focus on for an expansion and then rotate those around. Or if you want to go to the model of always just supporting every class in an expansion, trying to figure out, I think there's actually a place for these kind of single class sets because it just upends the meta so much that you suddenly have an influx of cards designed for one single class, and potentially you can make that class much better for a short period of time in the meta. So I had a question recently from someone asking me why specifically I thought early Flesh and Blood boxes were underpriced and what I thought would make them go up in price in the future. And I thought about it for a little bit, and I responded that, these early boxes, when they got printed, when Legend Story Studio had to submit print run numbers to the printers and have them made, they had certain ideas in mind. Legend Story Studio did. What they were thinking of at the time was, what does our current data on player base look like, how much we think the market can absorb, how much we think it'll absorb over the next, say, 12 to 18 months that a new set remains relevant, and then how much do they think the player base would grow within that time period, and then they would make an estimate on how much to print based on that. And over time, those estimates become less and less relevant, because obviously if they made an estimate for something like Crucible of War Unlimited, well, as time goes on, the game grows beyond what it was at the point when they made those original estimates. And so the player base grows, it gets bigger and bigger, and the number of boxes left to satisfy what in the past was a smaller player base is no longer sufficient for the present larger player base and the expected future even larger player base. And so when Flesh and Blood had a large uptick in new players in late 2022, that kind of threw all of the computations for the print run sizes of early Flesh and Blood boxes out the window. And additionally, there's the fact that if Wizards of the Coast wants to grow Magic the Gathering's player base, let's say they want to double it, that's going to be a monumentally difficult task because something like Magic probably already has 50, 60, 70% market share in North America. And so you can't double the player base without literally just pulling in huge numbers of people who have either left the game in the past or have never played TCGs to start with. But if Legend Story Studios wants to double Flesh and Blood's player base, well, and I have no idea what the real number is, but let's say they have a 5% market share in North America. Doubling that to 10% is not that hard. All you really have to do is find enough Magic players and convince them to come over and try out Flesh and Blood. And so the growth potential for something like Flesh and Blood is much, much greater than a lot of other games out there, as well as it's already established. It's not a speculative new game like One Piece, Sorcery, Lorcana, that could just fail if the companies running them don't do a good job of managing the product. So Flesh and Blood is in that kind of Goldilocks zone of already proved itself, already established in the market, already a very successful tier 2 or maybe tier 3 TCG in North America, and has the potential still, because it's a relatively small game compared to games like Magic or Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh! It still has the potential to grow greatly. Something else I've seen in recent months is people claiming that these early Flesh and Blood boxes will basically have no value in the future because so many of the heroes in them and the weapons that support them and things like that, the heroes themselves have achieved living legend status and are no longer tournament legal. And I would always look at those arguments and be kind of confused, and I would think, but don't people realize that on the long timeline, Flesh and Blood's formats for play and tournament play are going to look a lot like Magic's formats. And eventually you'll have something akin to Magic's vintage format where most old cards are legal. And of course, in October, we saw the release of the Living Legend format, which finally puts to bed that idea that, well, old boxes are going to be worthless because the heroes inside them are all living legends. You had to expect that there would be players who would eventually want to come back and play with those old heroes in a more no-holds-barred kind of format where the power level is higher, where the card pool is larger, and you simply needed enough time in Flesh and Blood's history for there to be enough expansions released so that what, say, we call standard in Magic would look different enough than vintage. And you can imagine a time period in 1995 when essentially if you had had a standard Magic format and a vintage format, the card pools would have overlapped so much that there just would not have been much meaningful difference. And so I think that Legend Story Studios finally decided that after 10, 11, 12 expansions, it was time to unleash that Living Legend format and have something that was different in rules, in card pool, than their regular formats that they play at tournaments. So it's good to see that. I kind of thought it was obvious that it was always coming, but at least for people who were hung up on the idea that Living Legend status would cause old boxes to not be worth anything, they don't have to worry about that anymore. A couple more things. I hit 2,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel recently. I'm going to do a 2,000 subscriber Q&A, so if you have any questions, put them in the comments below. I'll sweep them up with all the rest of the comments from other recent videos, put them together, and sometime in the next couple days, I'll be filming that and publishing it. And lastly, have a Merry Christmas, whatever you celebrate. Thanks to all my patrons who make all this content possible. Like, comment, share, and subscribe, and join me on Final Trade. Go spend some time with your families.